Well, this book that I'm holding is called Revolution in a Chinese Village, 10 Mile Inn. It was first published in 1959, and the author, Isabel Crook. This afternoon, I had tea with Isabel Crook and her son Michael Crook at their home in Beijing.
How many sons do you have, Mum?
No sons.
Isabel, whose life has spanned over a century as an anthropologist and author of studies on China, has lived a remarkable life, matching her amazing age. How did her legendary life begin in China? More than 100 years ago, in the late Qing dynasty, groups of Canadian missionaries boarded ships in Vancouver, bound for Shanghai, where they traveled by boat up the Yangtze into Sichuan. Isabel's father was one of them. In 1912, Isabel's father, Homer Brown, arrived in Chengdu, where he eventually became Dean of Education at West China Union University. He's a farm boy. They were very proud of being in the countryside. Inheriting this family trait, Isabel held no fear for the hardships of rural life, joyfully spending long stints in Chinese villages to do research.
So my mother from a very early age got to see village life in China and the poverty, the incredible poverty. So after she came back in '38, she immediately decided to train herself into becoming an anthropologist. She went off to live in a Yi village.
During Isabel's anthropology research in China in the 1930s, she saw the hardships of Chinese people's lives. Isabel has been thinking of ways to help.
The Christians believe in service, and they wanted to do good, and Grandma and Grandpa, and they thought building schools and hospitals and things is good. But were they able to really change society and give the poor farmers a better life?
In 1940, Isabel met the most important person in her life, David Crook, a British Communist Party member who was inspired by the book Red Star Over China, written by Edgar Snow, and decided to come to China. In 1942, Isabel married David Crook. Later, she joined in the anti-fascist struggle by enlisting in the Canadian Army. In 1947, Isabel and David sailed the oceans, crossing the blockade to enter China's liberated areas, ending up in the village of 10 Mile Inn, deep in the Taihang Mountains of southern Hebei. There, they made a detailed study of the entire land reform process that was launched by the Communist Party of China.
They took their time. The thing to do was understand who holds the land, who are the different classes of people, and who's a tenant farmer, who are the poor farmers, who are the middle peasants or the rich farmers and the landlords. So how are you going to do this? Are you just going to take from the rich and give to the poor? But no, the rich have to live as well, so let's leave some land for the landlord and so on. So anyway, this slow process, which was also very democratic, because after a lot of discussions, it would gradually become clear to the villagers who are the people who care about their welfare and are smart enough to maybe win the respect of the villagers.
Isabel and David lived with the poor villagers for more than half a year. They used not only their pens and typewriters, but their cameras, making detailed and complete records.
Then the Farmers Association, they would elect leaders, and how they elected them, they didn't have ballots, most of them were illiterate, but they were given beans which they could put in jars. So the Chinese Communist method of mobilizing the people, engaging them in dialogue, and a participatory approach to doing the land reform. That was the secret of its success, I think. "10 Mile Inn, Revolution in a Chinese Village" was published in London, and 20 years later, Mass Movement in a Chinese Village was published in New York. These two valuable works helped people in the West learn about China's land reform. I think they both felt that a meaningful life would be one where one could actually do something for public good. They were not after personal wealth. I think that was what brought them together. And I think my mum had already abandoned Christianity as a solution to mankind's problems, but I think it was with Dad that she actually determined that after all, communism might be the solution to humanity's problems.
After their land reform study, they were invited by the CPC to stay and teach. Working together on the first English textbook in the new China, they helped train diplomats and English teachers, devoting themselves to the cause of education and China. David Crook died in China in 2000, and in 2019, Isabel Crook was awarded the Friendship Medal by the Chinese government.
他为人民谋幸福. But when you learned it, you say 他为人民谋生存。